Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumatimu Nishasane Kar Uta Varda Nishri Badra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi. Dagi Jetson Lama Doje Jenyamda Dala Doje Sezo So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Uyon Sunge Nama Sedo So Seje Nine Soa Debe Zede Jen Korlo Visul Ila Sambe Dede Malle Bage Mel Hunge Drubra Jinge Lo Sonye Sodan Dikdun Shape Zedunge Namge Yinsu Lesho Ne Lobjan Sonye Yonso Sobadan Chiranye Dun Cham Jancho Parge Ninsen Tugundu Nyu Beme Zudro Lesho Ne Jancho Drube Gegen Kunshi Shi Tungen De La Drubra Jinge Lo Dage Lo Na Chola Chopa Nimba Shiwa Dan Chedan Tumbe Dede Malyo Babe Mel Hunge Drubra Jinge Lo Dorna Tene Tsira Tamche Dan Teche Pardo Nega Tamche Tu Rese Kemne Lama Kele Me Tuje Chinge Dala Sikso So Gongya Dreve Nimda Daja La Jetson Lame Tuje Kudan Sunge Nawa Drame Do Nimzo Nyowe Kesan Tobra Shoke Wa Kundo Yanda Lama Dan Drame Joge Bela Lonjo Je Sadan Lamge Dorje Change Koba Nyur Toba Sho Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Lo Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tugdan Da Ten Yerme Chiktu Jingil Makyuke Kudan Dagi Lo Makyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tugdan Dagi Ten Yerme Chiktu Jingilo Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni Swaha Sangye Chodan Zoge Chonam La Janjo Bardo Dani Kyapso Che Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ge Drola Pinchire Sangye Drubrasho Sangye Chodan Zoge Chonam La Janjo Bardo Dani Kyapso Che Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ge Drola Pinchire Sangye Drubrasho Sangye Chodan Tsoge Chonam La Jancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Gi Drola Pinchire Sangye Druparasho. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. So, one important thing for us to understand also is the fact that traditionally the way the teachings are given and the way that we study, we reflect, we meditate and so on is not a linear way, but it's more like a spiral. The difference basically is that when we have a linear way of learning and of practicing and so on, it means once I finish this subject, I go to the next subject, and then I go to the next subject, and like this I'm always going forward. Now this is, I think, by my sensation, that's mainly our, let's say, more Western way of learning somehow, no? When we learn, we finish one subject, then we go to the next, and then this brings us to the next, and so on. The way how we learn inside Buddhism is not so much like that. It's more like a spiral. in which we come back again and again to the same point. But when we repeat the same thing, we are not, if we look from above, like in a two-dimensional way, it looks like we are doing the same thing again. But when we look from the side, we see that actually we are going up every time. It's like a spiral. Every time when we turn around, we go back to the same place, but we are not at the same place. We are going higher and higher, or if we change the metaphor, we are going deeper and deeper. Okay? So what happened is that whenever, let's say, we need to go again and again to see the Four Noble Truths or to see anything of the teachings, the more we look to it, the more a different way, we have a deeper understanding. For example, 2 days ago, I was reading this book of Kewantung Carlos Antinle about the 9 mixings, and it was a complete different experience reading it now than when I read it 5-6 years ago, whenever it was. It looked completely like a different book. So this is just to say that we change, we learn new things, we have different experiences. So as we transform ourselves and we go again to the same knowledge, to the same understanding, it actually brings us to a different knowledge and a different understanding. It is different, it's not the same thing. Because when the observer changes, the reality that we perceive changes in this way. So because of that reason, with the teachings, we will repeat again and again the same teachings, the same practices, because actually it is not the same from the moment that we are changing and the context is changing and so on and so on, okay? This is also to say that I wanted during these 4 days to say many things that actually, for example, the 5 powers of preparing oneself, the 5 forces to prepare oneself for that. But we are not able with time to do it, and there are other things, but we will have other opportunities to do it again and to go through the same subjects again and again, and by gradually we go deeper and deeper into the understanding and the experience. Okay? So, it is important for us to understand when we talk about the 3 transformations and the 9 mixings. I wanted to explain these things yesterday, but actually, because we gave much more time to the process of death and we gave more time to also the process of the bardo and rebirth and so on, which I think was also very important to give more time to that. We don't have so much time left today because we have only today to see the 3 transformations and the 9 mixings. So let's go directly to the point, otherwise we'll not be able, we have a lot to see. So the first thing to see is the so-called 3 transformations. 3 transformations in Tibetan is called Kusum Lamkir, and Kusum Lamkir actually, it doesn't mean 3 transformations, okay? Very often we have difficulties in translations because something that is common is that the translator will make more simple for the understanding of the people by making some sort of commented translation. We'll add his own interpretation to it, which in a way is very good because it helps people to understand, but in a way is also a bit dangerous because it is the interpretation of the translator, which not necessarily is the correct one. No? And sometimes also some things are translated in a literal way without truly knowing the context and the meaning, and this is also a bit dangerous. So for example, when we have the prayer of Trijang Rinpoche, there's a mistake, and we have this prayer in many of our sadhanas. It's a mistake that I saw not so long ago, in which it's written, the holder of the throne of the north, or the northern throne, to Trijang Rinpoche prayer, Trijang Rinpoche previous life. And I was reading this translation, I was saying, that's something strange in it, you know. The holder of the northern throne doesn't fit so well. Then I was looking into it, the Tibetan together, and then it became very clear why it was translated like that. It was the translation of Trijang Rinpoche's name, where Tri means throne, and Chang literally means north. So throne, north, the holder of the throne of the north. Okay? But the problem is that originally this is not a meaning. Actually, when we say, in Tibetan has this particular aspect that the same word written exactly in the same way can change meaning, changing the context in which it is. So where is this name coming from? Trijang doesn't mean the holder of the throne of the north. Trichang, it actually is the short way of the long name Trichan Chupchöpel. Trichan Chupchöpel was the name of the first incarnation of Trichan Rinpoche, official reincarnation of Trichan Rinpoche. That's why it became Trichang. Trichang is the short version of Trichan Chupchöpel. Okay? Tri means throne, which refers to the throne holder, as he was a Ganden Tripa. All those that are Ganden Tripas, which are the holders of the throne of Lama Tsongkhapa, are called Tri Rinpoche. Tri Rinpoche means the precious holder of the throne of Lama Tsongkhapa. So that's where the name Tri is coming from. He was one of the throne holders of the throne of Lama Tsongkhapa. Then, Chanchup Chöpel. Chanchup means enlightenment. Chöpel means to spread the Dharma. So to increase the Dharma. So Chanchup Chöpel, the holder of the throne of Lama Tsongkhapa, that spreads, that increases the Dharma of enlightenment. Okay? So this was the name of Chanchup Chöpel. So Chanchup Chöpel become Trichang, but it has nothing to do with north. Okay? If we want somehow to make a short translation, which is actually not fitting, like in this case in the translation, we should write Trichang, because that's a name. If we want to translate, then we could say the holder of the throne of enlightenment, but still it's not a real precise translation, okay? This is just to show like how sometimes we can have mistakes. There are very many cases in which, we're making translations, there are mistakes that come out of it, because of not really knowing well the context. That's why to make a translation is very important to have the knowledge about the subject, especially in a language like Tibetan. You cannot just it's like in the beginning when the first translators came to translate Lamas coming to the West, the first Tibetans that knew English, they didn't know much Dharma. So like when the first Noble Truths were translated in the beginning, they would translate, or instead of saying the Four Noble Truths, they were saying, there are 4 things that really exist. So this is a problem of not really knowing the meaning behind and doing the translation. So this is one of the reasons why it's so important for us to keep always the Tibetan text also, because it's only by knowing the Tibetan language that we can truly check if the meaning is truly correct or not in a translation and so on, okay? Anyhow, when we talk about here the 3 transformations, which is the way how normally often it's called, the literal meaning, it says, Kusum Lamker. Ku means body, Sum means tree, Kusum, 3 bodies, Lam is path, Kyer means to take. So, to take the 3 bodies into the path. But 3 transformations and to take the 3 bodies into the path is 2 different things, basically. They are connected, okay? But it means we take the 3 bodies of a Buddha, which is the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, the Nirmanakaya, into the path. The path means our practice, means what we are doing now. The complete name means Chiwa Choku Lamker, Pardo Lonku Lamker, Kewa Chulku Lamker, which says, bringing the Dharmakaya into the path of the death, which means transforming the death, which is the death. By death, we don't refer to the whole process of death. We refer specifically to the clear light of death. So it's transforming the clear light of death into the path of the Dharmakaya. Transforming the bardo into the path of Nirmanakaya. Transforming of Sambhogakaya. Transforming rebirth into the path of Nirmanakaya. Okay? Or we could translate also bringing Dharmakaya into the path at death, bringing the Sambhogakaya into the path at the bardo, bringing the Nirmanakaya at the path at rebirth. Okay? To understand the meaning of these 3 so-called transformations, we need first to understand the meaning of the 3 bodies. Otherwise, it's difficult to what does that mean, okay? What's the meaning of death? What's the meaning of bardo? What's the meaning of rebirth? We have seen yesterday and the day before. Now, we have here the three bodies, the Sambhogakaya, the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. The translation means the body of essence, the body of enjoyment, and the body of emanation. But sorry to say, but if I say the body of essence, the body of essence, the body of enjoyment, the body of emanation, it's just the same as saying Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. Okay, we don't get the meaning of what it is. To understand better, there are many descriptions of these three bodies in a very detailed way, and but quite difficult to grab the meaning also. There is like the definitions of these three when we study in the philosophy teachings and so on. But I want to go in a different way. Okay. How many bodies do we have? We have three bodies. We have the gross body, the subtle body, and the very subtle body. One very important thing to understand is that there is one saying in one text which says, wherever the body of Buddha is present, his mind is also present. But wherever our body is present, our mind is also present. It's not a special quality of the Buddhas. Body and mind are always together. Gross body, gross mind. Subtle body, subtle mind. Very subtle body, very subtle mind. It always goes together. Okay? And the speech is also there. Gross body, gross mind, and gross speech. Body, speech, and mind is always together in a gross level, subtle level, and very subtle level. Okay? So, let's understand it a little bit better. What is our gross body? Bone, flesh, organs, and so on. Okay, skin, blah, blah, okay? This is basically our gross body, what we know, what normally we would call body. The subtle body is the part of our body that we are not able to see with our naked eyes. So, for example, they are called the channels, the winds, and the drops. For example, the impulses that go within our nervous system, the electric impulses, can we see it? No, but they exist? Yes, okay. So this is just to make one example. So traditionally we call that the subtle body is divided by channels, winds, and drops, okay? Which is like, let's call it's also called more like the energy part of the body. Then there is the very subtle body. The very subtle body is described as being a very subtle energy wind. This very subtle energy wind which resides inside the indestructible drop at our heart that we explained yesterday. Okay? So it's like a very subtle energy. Together with the gross body, there is the gross mind. Okay? The gross mind is basically the part of our mind which perceives our senses. And it's the manifested aspect of the mind. The subtle mind that goes together with the subtle body is basically the part of the mind that is not manifested. For example, I can say to you, I am not angry because I am not angry, but I cannot say I do not have anger. The anger that I have but is not manifested, it's where? In the subtle mind. Okay? The same way I have knowledge, I have experiences, I have love, compassion, I have many things in the subtle mind that are lying down that are not manifested. Some people sometimes ask me, is the subtle mind the same thing as the unconscious mind? I have no idea. Because what is the unconscious? It's a term which is used specifically in one context of psychology and so on, and I have no knowledge enough to say if it's the same or not the same, so I prefer not to use this term. Okay? So, the subconscious. Not the unconscious, the subconscious. What we mean by subconscious, I'm not sure if it's the same as what we mean by subtle mind. Anyhow, the subtle mind are the aspects of our mind which are not manifested. Okay? The third part, with a very subtle mind, are the imprints of our mind. This very subtle mind doesn't have any part of cognitive thinking. There is no emotions. There is no attraction and aversion. The essence of the subtle mind is attraction, aversion, and indifference. Then in the very subtle mind, there is no attraction, there is no aversion, there is no indifference, there is no thinking, there is no idea, no memories. They are only the so-called imprints of our emotions, of our habits, of our experiences, of our actions, and so on. That's where our karmic imprints lie also, okay? In our very subtle mind. Then we have the gross speech. The gross level speech is basically what, as we talk, is how we manifest to the world, how we communicate to the world in a gross level that others can see and listen and so on. So it's as we talk and so on. I would have some doubt is when we write, is that part of our gross speech or not? This is we can open a discussion about that, but that's not the moment for that, okay? Subtle speech. The subtle speech and the very subtle speech are the brightness or the light of the energy winds. The energy has color. Energy has light. So the light that emanates, in other words, the energy that emanates, the vibration that emanates from the subtle body is the subtle speech. The vibration that emanates, the energy that emanates from the very subtle body is the very subtle speech. Okay? Body, speech, and mind always goes together. So, for example, and then another important thing, body and mind at all the three levels work as horse and the horse rider. The body is the horse, the mind is the horse rider. While the horse rider cannot walk and the horse is blind. So the horse rider cannot go where the horse is not taking him, but at the same time, the horse is not going anywhere that the horse rider is not directing him to go. Okay? So for instance, if we get a stroke or whatever type of illness that blocks some parts of our gross body, our gross mind will be affected by it. We can lose memory, we can lose cognitive power, we can lose many different things by the way how we affect our gross mind. Because the gross mind gives support, the gross body, by how we affect the gross body, because the gross body gives support to the gross mind. Okay? Depending on the substance that we take that affects the gross body, it will affect the gross mind. Okay? Similar to that, depending on the state of the subtle body, it will affect the subtle mind, and vice versa. And also the same thing with the very subtle body and very subtle mind. Okay? Now, the Dharmakaya is said to be the body of essence. The Dharmakaya is also said to be the essence of a Buddha, the essence of the mind of a Buddha. So, from my understanding, the Dharmakaya is the very subtle body, speech, and mind in a pure state of a Buddha. Okay? Just remember, whenever we say body, speech, and mind will go together. Both in the state as we are now and in the state of a Buddha. Okay? So, the Dharmakaya is the very subtle body. That's why we say we transform the death into the Dharmakaya. Because when in the moment of death, in the moment of clear light, what remains? Is there the gross body? No. Is there the subtle body? Not anymore also, because we already had the white vision, the red vision, the black vision, the subtle body with the subtle mind is also gone. So what's the only thing that remains at that moment? The very subtle mind. So the first transformation means to transform our very subtle mind into the very subtle mind of a Buddha, which means make it pure. Okay, after we will see how, but this is the first transformation. Second level is to transform the bardo into the Sambhogakaya. The Sambhogakaya, the body of enjoyment. Okay, sorry, one thing I forgot to say. The Dharmakaya is said that it can only be seen by another Buddha. The Dharmakaya of a Buddha can only be seen by other Buddhas. No other, any form of sentient being is able to see the Dharmakaya of a Buddha. Which means the very subtle body and mind can only be seen by another Buddha. So, the subtle body and mind, which is called the Sambhogakaya or the body of enjoyment, can only be seen by the bodhisattvas that have already gone out of samsara, that have already realized emptiness. Okay? So the bodhisattvas that have already gone out of samsara, they relate to the Buddhas with their subtle body. Okay? So this means once they have already reached the liberation from samsara, they have already realized emptiness and so on, they themselves don't need to manifest anymore, don't need to use anymore a gross body, and they relate with a subtle body with the Buddhas also. Okay? Our dream body, and also the bardo body, is a form of a subtle body. There is is not made out of how to say, gross matter. It's made more out of energy and is a so-called subtle form of the body. So we transform the bardo, which is a subtle form of our body, into the Sambhogakaya, the subtle body of a Buddha. And then there is rebirth. Rebirth is when we take again a gross body. And the Nirmanakaya, the body of emanation, is the body through which the Buddhas manifest in a form that we common beings can actually relate and connect. So which is the form of a Buddha that we can connect to? Can we see the Dharmakaya of a Buddha? Can we see the very subtle body of a Buddha? No. Can we see the subtle body of a Buddha? No. Can we see the gross body of a Buddha? Yes. So the Buddhas manifest themselves through a gross body out of kindness because they have no more need of having a gross body actually. They could stay only in the very subtle body actually, but they manifest through a gross body in actually to be able to connect with us and for us to be able to see and interact. So the Nirmanakaya is the gross body of a Buddha. Okay, for me this is the best definition actually. There are different definitions that we can go through as I have studied them, but I think they are more far away and difficult for us to understand. So I think with this is more easy for us to understand, no? Because otherwise we make this connection in which we think, oh, the Dharmakaya, the Sambhogakaya, the Nirmanakaya, we learn these difficult words and we make them something very mystical and far away, that completely disconnected from our reality. When actually the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya is what we are in a pure state. Okay? If it was not connected with what we are now, it would be impossible to bring it into the path. Okay? So, this is basically the three bodies. Now we'll go to see how the three transformations work. Ok. Perciò, i tre corpi dei Buddha. Oh, sorry, una cosa ti ho dimenticato in inglese. One thing only I forgot. There is the fourth body of a Buddha, which in Tibetan is called Ngowo Niko. Ngowo Niko, it said Ngowo means nature, Ni means only, Ku means body. The body of the ultimate nature, of the only nature, something like that. Which basically is the emptiness of the Buddha. Okay? Now we have the emptiness of ourselves, and then one day, as we become a Buddha, there will be the emptiness of the Buddha. That's the so-called the fourth body. But normally we always refer to three bodies mainly. Or sometimes we refer to two bodies, which is the choku and which basically is the body and the mind. Okay. Whenever we refer to two bodies of the Buddhas, which means the form body and the essence body, that refers actually to the mind and the body of a Buddha. Okay. Now we go to see the three transformations. There are some basic concepts that we need to understand in order to have a clear understanding about the three transformations. Okay. The first thing, the three transformations are subsequent, in the sense that we can only have the third transformation if we did the second, we can only have the second if we did the first. Okay. So the transformation of rebirth into the Nirmanakaya will come after the transformation of the bardo into Sambhogakaya, that can only come after the transformation of death into the Dharmakaya. That's why normally the first emphasis that is given is in the transformation of the death into the Dharmakaya. Because when that comes, all the other will come in a quite secure, gradual way. Okay. So, what is the Dharmakaya, first of all? The Dharmakaya is the state of mind of a Buddha. What is the main difference between our mind and the mind of a Buddha? We are ignorant, a Buddha is not. Okay. So, to understand this, the mind of a Buddha is a mind that perceives every phenomena as they truly are, that understands everything in their real true nature. Okay. So, to understand that better, we need first to understand how are we functioning now, so that by that we can try to understand better how it's the mind of a Buddha. So, we live in a reality that it is interdependent. We live in a reality that is subjective. But even though the reality in which we live is subjective, we perceive this reality as if it was objective. Okay. So reality appears to us as if it was objective, and we grab at it as if it was objective. So in other words, reality appears to us as if it was of inherent existence, and we grab at it also as if it was of inherent existence. We hold to it as if it was of inherent existence. We relate to it in that manner. For instance, if we take this object here, which we call a singing bowl, how many possibilities lie at this very right moment at this same object? How many things can it be? Countless. Okay? But are we aware of the countless possibilities that lie in each and every phenomenon, including ourselves at every moment, or not? No. We see the object, okay? We choose one possibility, and not only we choose one possibility, we are not only not aware that we chose one possibility, we think that the possibility we chose is the actual reality. So I look at it, I choose one possibility by calling it a singing bowl. It doesn't need necessarily to have a name like from the point of view of a verbal name. I attribute to it functions and characteristics. So I give a name to it, and in the moment that I give a name to it, I attribute functions and characteristics to it, I choose one possibility out of countless others. But we are not aware of that process. So what happens is that we look to it, we are not aware that we chose one possibility, and we think that the possibility we chose is the actual reality, and all the rest is wrong. Okay? So a Buddha is someone that when sees something, let's say, look at this object, can see the singing bowl, but at the same time can see all the other countless possibilities together. I know it's mind-blowing. It's difficult for us even to put inside our mind. Because what happens at our state now, as ignorance, is that we are not able to put two things together, which is the relative reality, in which this is a singing bowl, and it has its functions and it works, and the absolute reality, which is that there are countless possibilities together at the same time. That is not a singing bowl by its own characteristics, but it depends on the name that is attributed to it and so on. Okay. So we now are not able to put, in the moment that we observe that there are countless possibilities and it lacks inherent existence, simply it stops existing for us. We are not able to perceive it. We are not able to grab at it anymore. It's like if it fades away. That's why when we are on the path before reaching enlightenment, whenever we perceive the lack of inherent existence, we cannot perceive anything else other than the lack of inherent existence. If I meditate on the lack of inherent existence of the singing bowl, when I really perceive that it lacks inherent existence, I'm not able to see the singing bowl anymore. There is only the lack of inherent existence. Because in our mind, which is a dualistic mind right now, this is our ignorance, we are not able to put together the two things. The fact that that it is interdependent, that it lacks inherent existence, that it exists within countless possibilities, and that it is a singing bowl.
But at the same time, it is so many other things together. We are not able to put these two things together. So this is one of the main qualities of a Buddha. A Buddha has gone beyond this ignorance of grasping at phenomenon as if they were of inherent existence. And also, not only that, a Buddha doesn't have even anymore the appearance of inherent existence. And a Buddha relates to each and every phenomena, seeing their relative truth, which is choosing one of the possibilities, but at the same time seeing all the possibilities together. In other words, for the Buddha, there is no more difference between a relative truth and absolute truth. They are exactly the same. Okay? So, what lies between ourself and ourself being a Buddha? What obstructs ourself from being a Buddha? Our ignorance. The ignorance of grasping at reality as being of inherent existence. And the ignorance and the imprints of ignorance, which is the appearance of such objective, autonomous, inherent existence. Okay? The anger, the jealousy, the pride, the miserliness, the aggression, and so on, are just side effects of the ignorance. So, based on that, what happened is that the process to become a Buddha is the process of eliminating our own ignorance. That's the main process of doing it. In our minds, there is one specific thing which is, in order for us to eliminate any aspect of the mind, the only way of doing it is by generating a direct opposite state of mind, a direct opposite mode of apprehension. So, for instance, if I have the mind which says, I don't like water, how can I eliminate the mind that thinks I don't like water? By generating the mind that thinks, I like water. If I think I don't like water and I start thinking, oh yes, but the water has a good taste, the water is pure, it's good for my health, this is not enough to like water. Only when by the whole process I induce myself to the thought, I like water, that's the only moment in which the mind, I don't like water, is gone. Okay? So, the mind that, what is our fundamental ignorance? Is the mind that grasps at inherent existence as being true. Is the mind that grasps at reality as if it was objective when actually it is subjective. Okay? So it is an affirmation, is a false affirmation. It's the false affirmation of reality having one's own independent reality, of reality being of inherently existent reality. Okay? So this affirmation can only be opposed by a negation. And the negation is, I grasp the singing bowl is of inherent existence. What is the opposite mind of it? What's the opposite mode of apprehension? The singing bowl is not of inherent existence. The singing bowl lacks inherent existence. The singing bowl is empty of inherent existence. And that's where emptiness comes from. Shunyata. The so well-known, so much spoken emptiness, it is actually the negation as a direct opposite mode of apprehension to the false affirmation of ignorance. Okay? Now, our ignorance exists only in a gross level or only in a more or also in a more subtle level. In other words, our own ignorance is something that comes from this life, or it's a result of the culture where we live and the life and the context in which we will grow up, or it's something that we bring with us since our birth. Since our birth and before. Okay? So the ignorance exists in three levels. At a gross level, at a subtle level, and at a very subtle level. So from the very subtle level, in our very subtle mind is where we bring the imprints of all our defilements, of our qualities, of our experiences, of our habits and our actions. Everything is in our very subtle mind. The very subtle mind manifests in the subtle and manifests in the gross. Remember the example we gave yesterday. We have a nucleus, which is a very subtle mind, and we have different layers. the subtle mind, and then the gross mind, which have even more layers on top of it. Whatever reflects on the layers of the subtle and the very subtle mind, it's what is coming from the very subtle mind. Whatever reflects on the layers of the subtle and the gross mind, it's what is manifesting from the very subtle mind. But the gross mind can shape the subtle mind, and the subtle mind can shape the gross mind. The very subtle mind. The gross mind can shape the subtle mind, and the subtle mind can shape the very subtle mind by making imprints into it. So every time I say something with my gross mind, I am shaping my subtle mind, and by that I'm shaping my very subtle mind. Okay? So the process is, in order for me to change the ignorance in a gross level, what I need to develop? Wisdom, which is the wisdom that realizes emptiness, which is the negation of inherent existence, that there is a direct opposition to the affirmation of inherent existence, okay? So, I develop wisdom that realizes the lack of inherent existence in a gross level. At that moment, the ignorance in a gross level cannot exist anymore. But then, it still exists in a subtle level. That's why after it comes back again in a gross level later. Okay? So I need to develop wisdom at a subtle level in order to eliminate ignorance at a subtle level. But it is still existing in a very subtle level. So I need to develop wisdom at a very subtle level in order to eliminate the ignorance at a very subtle level. Okay? So what is the process to do that? First, we need to realize emptiness. We need to understand how phenomena lack inherent existence. But then we need to bring that wisdom from a gross level to a subtle level, and from a subtle level to a very subtle level. Okay? So in the path of the sutra, this is done in a gradual way, which is by developing again and again wisdom at a gross level, conceptual gross level. It will gradually develop the wisdom at a subtle level and shape the mind at a subtle level. By meditating again and again and again on a subtle level on wisdom, it will gradually shape the mind on a very subtle level. It takes many, many, many lives. It is possible, but it's a very gradual process. Okay? So, the imprints of ignorance, even though after getting out of samsara, they are still there. Okay? Actually, to eliminate the ignorance on a subtle level, when on the path of sutra, it takes 1/3 of the path. To eliminate the imprints, which is to change it on a very subtle level, it takes 2/3 of the path. In other words, when we reach the path of seeing, it's when the ignorance on a subtle level is eliminated, which is the true realization of emptiness, which is getting out of samsara. But then after that, there is the whole path of meditation until one's reached the path of no more learning, which is the whole process actually to eliminate ignorance on a very subtle mind, which is to eliminate the imprints of ignorance. The imprints of ignorance is the appearance of inherent existence. No more grasping, but there is still the appearance. So, what would be the only possible shortcut? I need to develop wisdom at a very subtle mind state. When can we access our very subtle mind? When we die. So death is the biggest opportunity of our life. And what is the mechanism of death that we have seen? The very last thought on a gross level directs the mind on a subtle level. And this directs the mind on a very subtle level. So the direction that the mind follows on a subtle level is the last gross thought. And the direction that the mind follows on a subtle level is the direction that the mind will take on a subtle level, is the direction that the mind will take on a very subtle level. In other words, if I die with anger, I will create very strong imprints of anger. Okay? If I die with love, I will create deep imprints of love. And if I die with wisdom, I will make deep, strong imprints of wisdom. Okay? So, this is the mechanism. Okay? The question is how to do that. Okay? So the mechanism, the logic behind Tantra, and this is the beauty of Tantra for me, the beauty of the Vajrayana path, is that it uses the natural thing of our aspect, it uses the body, it uses the natural process of our life, of our death, bardo, rebirth, and so on, as a tool for our own enlightenment. That's why it's called the quick path to enlightenment. Because there is this shortcut. It's a very small, in many possibilities, it's a very small passage. But it is possible. So we induce ourselves through the natural process of our body, through the death, into the very subtle level, but we direct it to wisdom, to familiarize our mind at that state. Okay? So, the first transformation, which is called the transformation of death into the Dharmakaya, it happens through the union of the clear light, the mother clear light and the child clear light. The mother clear light is the normal clear light of death that everyone has. Like Penche Losang Chogi Gensen said in the Daksin Shaktep, Sachu Neston Trokpupar, Chiwe Tusu Wesema, Teyan Shi Chakchen. Sachu Neston Trokpupar, from the Bodhisattva of the 10th ground, which is the one that is just about to reach enlightenment, to an end. Saju Nesun Tropu, Tropu means end. So from the highest level that someone can be before reaching enlightenment to an insect, to an ant. Saju Nesun Tropu Chiwe Tusu, at the time of death, Selma, there is the clear light, the mother clear light. Tian Shin Chakchi, this is also called the basis of the Mahamudra. Okay, now I'm not entering into the meaning of Mahamudra, but this is just to say that every sentient being, in the moment of death, goes through clear light. Okay? And this is called the mother clear light. The child clear light, which the two need to unite at the moment of death, is our meditation. Okay? So, what needs to be done? One needs to meditate on the process, meditate on emptiness, basically, making it simple, we will explain a little bit later, and induce oneself through the process of death in that meditation. And reach the state of clear light within the realization of the lack of inherent existence, and within a state of bliss. So this is, and once we stay on that state, which is the meditation of clear light, this will familiarize the mind on a very subtle level, and by that eliminate suffering at a very subtle level. Eliminate, and that reach enlightenment. That's why it becomes the Dharmakaya. Okay. Now, what is happening in the Vajrayana path here is the use of the natural processes of our body and mind for our own path to enlightenment. That's why we say transform death into the Dharmakaya. We use the process of death to reach the Dharmakaya. Okay, that's the ultimate meaning of it. So, there are other moments during our lifetime also when our mind enters into more subtle levels. The strongest moment of all is the moment of death. But there are some other similar moments which we can also use during our lifetime. One moment is the moment of death. That's the most strong, deepest, that's the best opportunity. Another moment, it is actually the moment of falling asleep, but it is very subtle, it is not so strong, but it's also important. Which means, as when we fall asleep is a moment where our gross mind enters into a more subtle state, the state of mind in which we fall asleep is going to be more, we'll follow a more subtle state, and then this will become more strong in our mind on a subtle level. Then there is when we faint, but we don't faint every day. I have never fainted in my life. And then there is that other way, which is somehow a taboo, but I prefer to talk about things and make them clear, which is the moment of orgasm. The moment of the sexual bliss. There is a specific moment in that where the winds absorb into the central channel, and it is described that at that moment, the person enters into a state in which there is no more perception of the five senses. There is no more conceptual thinking. And at that moment, it is the moment where actually the mind enters into a more subtle level. It is not the very subtle level of death, but it's a quite very subtle level which is possible. The stronger is the state of bliss, the more deep the mind goes. Okay? So this brings us to something which is quite simple actually to understand, which is what happens if I enter into a deeper state with a mind of attachment? What is the imprint I'm creating in a more deeper level in myself? Attachment. This is one of the problems that there is, because 99.9999999, and we can go on saying 9% of the cases, people use the sexual union as a final goal of pleasure. Okay? That's what happened. That's a common thing. So, if we enter into a deeper level of consciousness with a state of attachment, what are we familiarizing ourselves with on a deeper level? Attachment. So it will make our attachment always to grow stronger and stronger and stronger. So because we are not in a context of a monastic sangha, let's say, I prefer just to touch open brackets and close brackets about it very quickly. Because if we use this moment of life, if you use it not to cultivate attachment, but for example, you can use it to cultivate love. If anyone enters into a deeper state of consciousness, starting with a mind of feeling true love, what will happen? What is the state of mind that we are familiarizing ourselves with? Love. If we do it with wisdom, what are we familiarizing ourselves with? Wisdom. Okay? So here, I just want to point out something. Is it possible to use the sexual union as a method on the path to enlightenment? Technically, yes. This doesn't mean, as sometimes I see people saying, oh, this means that Tantra means making sex. No. If it was like this, most people would have already reached enlightenment, okay? The point is that, like, I remember when I was a kid and I would get like a software for computer and games and so on. Computer software still today they have, but today we don't look too much at it anymore. There was like the minimum requirements of the computer for that software to run. What was the memory you need to have, the type of processor, blah, 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 okay? So there were the minimum requirements. Similar to that, to use the sexual union as a tool for enlightenment, there are minimum requirements. Making them simple, otherwise the computer will go on, how to say, if you try to run that software, the computer will get blocked. Okay, similar to that, we will have a bug. It will get blocked if we use it in the wrong way. It will bring us to the opposite direction. So what are the minimum requirements? Renunciation, love towards oneself, bodhicitta, true love towards others, correct view of reality. Correct view of reality is the big requirement, okay? Realization of emptiness. That's the main requirement. Then there are other requirements such as understanding our subtle winds of energy and having control over the winds of energy and so on. These are other requirements. So, at least for myself, I am still in the process of developing requirements, okay? So, it's just important to make it clear. Otherwise, people talk a lot, we have ideas and understanding and this and that, blah, 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 blah. So, it is something that technically it will be possible, but it requires, because it means having full control of one's own mind, having full love towards sentient beings. By that, they're having a mind that realizes emptiness truly, having control over one's energy, and using the physical process of the body as it's like taking the current to surf. It's like taking the wave to surf on it. So, using that to enter into a deeper state of consciousness and familiarizing ourselves deeper and deeper with wisdom. Okay? But it is something that is not so obvious and so simple, but theoretically possible. But before that, anyone can actually at least try to enter into deeper states of consciousness with a positive state of mind. At least with love. This is something that you can try to cultivate and to use it in this way, at least that. Okay? Now we go back to the transformations. So what is the truth? In the first transformation, it means that we need to induce ourselves into the process of death by generating the wisdom that realizes emptiness. Okay? So this is, and once with that state of mind we reach clear light, then by realizing the true nature of reality within the state of clear light, which is the mind of a Buddha, then we joined our own clear light with the clear light of wisdom, which is the mind of a Buddha, which is the realizing of the lack of inherent existence, the union of great bliss and emptiness. Okay? So now let's see how we do that through meditation first. Okay? And the real way how to make it happen is what is called the 9 mixings. Okay? So, the last part regards how do we do this process of transforming the death into the Dharmakaya. Okay? Because we understood more or less technically what is the process. And now we need to go through the understanding of what do we need to do in order to induce ourselves through that process. So, there are a few steps important here. First thing is that in order for us to bring our mind at a very subtle level on a state of wisdom, first we need to generate wisdom at a more gross level. So the first step we do through a mantra, which is normally the mantra Om Sobhava Shuddha Sarvadharma Sobhava Shuddhaham. The mantra Om Sobhava Shuddha Sarvadharma Sobhava Shuddhaham, or in some practices is used the mantra Om Shunyata Jnana Vajra Sobhava Atma Koham. We will explain now through the mantra Om Sobhava Shuddha Sarvadharma Sobhava Shuddhaham. Om have different meanings such as body, speech and mind, or the three bodies. Om Swabhava means nature. Om Swabhava Shuddha means pure, like in self-healing Shuddha, clean, clear, pure. So Swabhava Shuddha, nature pure. Sarva, all, Dharma, phenomenon. So Om Swabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma. Om, all phenomena are of a pure nature. Swabhava, nature. Shuddha, pure. Sarva, all, Dharma, phenomena. Swabhava, Shuddha, Aham, which when we recite together becomes Swabhava Shuddhoham. Il Shuddhoham, if we open, becomes Shuddha Aham. Swabhava, nature, Shuddha, pure, Aham, I am. So the translation of the mantra will be Om, all phenomena are of a pure nature, I am of a pure nature. Soha. Soha, so may it be. So, it means all phenomena are of a pure nature. What is the pure nature of all phenomena? All phenomena lack inherent existence. It's like when we talk about something being clean. It's clean of dirt. Nothing can be just clean. It must be clean of something. Something it's pure of what? Of impurities, of dirt. So what is the dirt of which phenomena are clean? What is the impurity of which phenomena are pure, are free of? All phenomena are of pure nature in the sense that all phenomena are pure from inherent existence. So we could make a commented translation which would be, all phenomena are empty of inherent existence, all phenomena lack inherent existence, and I also lack inherent existence. Normally the translation is also done like, all phenomena are of a pure nature and so am I. Okay? So at this moment, we meditate on the fact that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. Nothing exists as it appears as being of an objective, solid, inherent existence. Okay? One important step that actually needs to come before that is that one specific aspect in Tantra is that in the Vajrayana path in Tantra, we use the state of great bliss in order to realize emptiness. So I think most of you have listened many times the word the union of great bliss and emptiness, union of great bliss and emptiness many times. So the meaning of this union of great bliss and emptiness is not that we need to realize bliss and emptiness and put them together. That's not like that. The right way is that we need to generate bliss within ourselves, and from within a state of bliss, we realize emptiness. That's the union of great bliss and emptiness, in a simple way of explaining. It's like when I listen to the sound of the bell. I can listen to the sound with joy or with sadness. So somehow it's like the joy is listening, the sadness is listening. Okay? So similar to that, we generate a state of bliss, and because the state of bliss, the state of pleasure, is a very powerful state of mind. For example, when we drink water or we drink something that is pleasurable or we eat something, whenever we experience any pleasure, in the moment of the pleasure, that very instant of the pleasure, how is our mind? Is our mind relaxed within the pleasure, or we are thinking about many things? Normally we are relaxed. Our conceptual thinking stops in the moment of pleasure. Normally, okay? So what happens is that it's a very, very powerful state of mind. The mind of pleasure, the mind of bliss. So we use this mind as a tool, as a vehicle, to realize the lack of inherent existence, the true nature of reality. So Papunka Rinpoche describes saying that, before that, like in self-healing, when we do first Eyam Ram Lam Bam, and after we do On Subhavashuddha Sarodharma Subhavashuddha, which means Eyam Ram Lam Bam is that when the wind enters through the central channel, makes the tomb of fire to go up, melts the white bodhicitta, and brings bliss to the whole of our body. So even I had some of our friends that had this experience in meditation, that to experience the sensation of bliss. And for example, one friend came to me describing this experience, and she was actually even quite shy to talk about it, because she was saying, look, I was doing my meditation, which was through some recitation of mantra and meditation, and suddenly I start feeling heat coming out of my navel, below the navel, and then the heat start going up, and then suddenly it brings a sensation of pleasure that starts filling the whole body, and I couldn't move because it was so pleasurable, it was so good, and I was not moving for one instant, and it was extremely pleasurable sensation. And the only thing that I can say somehow to try to describe that sensation was it was like an orgasm that would not end anymore. No? So this is, in a few words, what we explain by the bliss. That is like, this is just one example of a sensation of bliss that comes through meditation. Okay? So this is the bliss that we intend when we say the union of great bliss and emptiness. It is said that in the beginning, when meditators start generating bliss and they are not able to yet to control it, they start shaking also, because it's too strong, the sensation. Okay? But anyhow, what happened is that this sensation of bliss is a very powerful state of mind. So it's with this state of bliss that one is supposed at that moment to realize the true nature of reality, the true nature of phenomenon. So, first thing, we meditate on this state of bliss. What Papunka Rinpoche describes for beginners is that he says, the first thing that we do is that we remember a state of happiness, of joy, of bliss. We try to remember the strongest state of bliss and happiness that we had. So we bring it back to our memory, and then from within that state of bliss, we meditate on the lack of inherent existence. The lack of inherent existence that we will meditate on, it is depending on our own level of understanding. So it depends if we are just in the beginning of understanding interdependence, or if we go to the actual understanding that relative truth is the same nature of absolute truth, or if we go to the actual lack of inherent existence, we can have different levels of understanding of it. Okay? So the important thing is that whatever is our own level of understanding, whatever is our own level of bliss and our own level of understanding of emptiness, at that moment we apply it. After that, we start simulating the process of death. We do that by, first of all, visualizing that the whole environment around us, the whole universe, dissolves into light. We have done that meditation many times when we say the whole universe dissolves into light. Actually, this is not that we are simulating the fact that the universe doesn't exist. We are simulating our own process of death, as we have seen yesterday. When the earth dissolves into water, what's the first sense that we lose? The eye sense. And as we lose the eye sense, and we lose also the wisdom of the basis of the wisdom of the mirror-like wisdom of the basis, at the same time also we lose the perception of the world around us so much. So this is we simulate it by imagining that everything is dissolving into light. The way how we imagine this dissolution is like if we go to a glass or a mirror in winter and then we do what in Tibetan is called hadap. I would not know exactly how to translate it into English. We just go and we do, no? And then it becomes all like misty. And then slowly it fades away. But it fades from the edges to the center. Similar to that, the center is in our heart. And gradually the whole universe fades in the direction of our heart. Fading in the direction until everything dissolves into our body. And then also our body gradually dissolves into the direction of the heart, okay? There are different steps of visualization in this moment. Normally we visualize the syllable hum in the heart, and then gradually the syllable hum dissolves. But this is also may not be so easy for many of us because we don't know the Tibetan letter hum, and we may get a little bit blocked with that. One of the best ways to do is you go back through the process of death that we have been seeing, and then we imagine one after the other. Okay, now is the dissolution of earth. Then now earth is dissolving into water. Water is dissolving into fire. Fire is dissolving into wind. Wind is dissolving into the consciousness. White vision, red vision, black vision, and clear light. So we go through each one of them, and slowly, as we learn better, we add more and more details to it. The dissolution of our senses and the dissolution of the mind and so on. We add more and more details about the process of death. The very important thing is that as we go through the process, we use, comparison logic, which is like, if I understand that the cup lacks inherent existence, I look at the book and I say, oh, the book also lacks inherent existence, just as the cup. Okay? So first we meditate on the lack of inherent existence, starting from one object, and then we meditate that all phenomena lack inherent existence, and so do I. Then after meditating on that, we start simulating the process of death, but every one of the visions that we have, like the mirage-like vision, and then we have the foggy vision, then there's the points of light, sparkling vision, then the vision like the candlelight that is shivering, then the white vision, red vision, black vision, and clear light. During the whole process, we go through this process remembering that, okay, like having the perception, it appears as a mirage, but it lacks inherent existence. It appears as a fog, but it lacks inherent existence. And like this we go on step by step until we reach clear light. This is when we are simulating the gross mind that gradually dissolves into the subtle mind, but it keeps the same direction. Okay? Until we reach the state of clear light, and at that moment we make the union of what is called the mother clear light with the daughter clear light, with the child clear light. No? And the mother clear light means our natural state of clear light. I think I already talked about this in English before, no? The mother clear light, no. So I didn't make the citation of Panchen Losang Chogi Gyaltsen in English, no. So, as Panchen Losang Chogi Gyaltsen said in the text of the Dagzin Shaktep, Sajunesun Tropobar Chue Tusu Us. No, I said this in English already. Chue Tusu Us Matian Shi Chakchen. From the high level, 10th level bodhisattva, the one that is just about to reach enlightenment, to an ant, I didn't say in Italian, actually. I didn't say this in Italian, actually. So all of them has the mother clear light at the moment. So when we visualize that at the moment of death, that's the mother clear light. But we unite this with four aspects, which is jointing it with the daughter, with the child clear light. What are the four aspects at the moment of clear light? We have the appearance, Nawa Tongsang, is the appearance of an infinite emptiness full of light. Because what we are perceiving at that moment is clear light, so there is no any more gross body, no more subtle body, there is only clear light. So there is this infinite emptiness full of light. This infinite emptiness full of light, Nawa Tongsang, Ngengo Rangshing Meba, that is perceived as being empty of inherent existence. So it's an infinite emptiness full of light that is empty of inherent existence. How we get to that? Because we started at every step we meditate that is lack of empty of inherent existence. Okay, so we keep that mode of apprehension until the clear light. Third aspect, Yuchen Dewa Chembuyeshe, the observer is great bliss. It's the wisdom of great bliss, which means wherever there is emptiness, there is bliss. Wherever there is bliss, there is emptiness. And the fourth aspect, Chokungagel, the divine pride of the Dharmakaya, which is wherever there is emptiness, there is bliss. Wherever there is bliss, there is emptiness. And wherever there is bliss and emptiness, I am there. I exist, and I am, and this is the Dharmakaya. Okay? So this we are simulating the very subtle mind of a Buddha. Okay? So this is what we mean to transform the death into the Dharmakaya. And by that we simulate the state of a Buddha on a very subtle level, in which is the very subtle mind that realizes in a non-conceptual way, within great bliss, the lack of inherent existence of oneself and everything else, not making difference between oneself and the rest. Okay? This is in very few words, trying to make in a simple way what is the meaning of the transformation of death into the Dharmakaya. Okay? So this is a very, very important part of the practice in the Vajrayana Tantric Buddhism. It's like we have this in two parts. We have it in the generation stage and the completion stage. Oh, sorry, this I didn't explain in English. This meditation of the dissolution of transformation of death into Dharmakaya, we have it in 2 moments of the practice. It's explained it's practiced in what is called the generation stage and in the completion stage. The main difference between making the meditation of the transformation of death into Dharmakaya of the generation stage and the completion stage is that the generation stage is where we imagine. We imagine the dissolution of the elements, we imagine the absorption of the winds and the whole process. In the completion stage, it actually happens. Okay? So in the completion stage, we induce ourselves through the process of the dissolution of the elements until almost reaching clear light and then coming back again. In the generation stage, we imagine the winds absorbing. In the completion stage, the winds actually absorb. Okay? So this is the main difference in Tantra when we talk about generation stage and completion stage. Okay? Anyhow, I'm very happy that we're able to see this. This is something which is very important in every practice. It's fundamental in self-healing. It's fundamental in every aspect of the practice of Tantra. And for me, it's a clear way to understand what do we mean when to say to reach enlightenment quickly. Because we go directly to the very subtle mind and we generate the mind of wisdom to eliminate ignorance within a very subtle state. And that's the only shortcut that exists in this way. Okay? So we'll stop here for now. And then in the afternoon, we will see the transformation of Bardo into Sambhogakaya, rebirth into Nirmanakaya, and then after we will see very briefly the 9 mixings. Okay?
Jetson lame kotse rapten chin nam kartin le chochur gepadang losan tempe dreme sasumgi drove munsel tatu ne gyurchi Nimo dele tsendele nime kunyan delekshin ninsen taktu delekpe koncho sumge jingi lop koncho sumge ngodrup tsol Concho sumge trashisho.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.